Welcome everybody to the Overwatch coaching session. We're going to wait a few minutes here and we'll get started right about 1:30. If you have any questions or comments you want to go ahead and start off with or anything like that, go and throw them in the chat. I can take a look at those. Otherwise, well, like I said, we'll just wait a couple minutes. Couple more people popping in. I'm just going to wait a couple minutes till 1:30 and then we'll get rolling. I think there's some anonymous views. I see Jake and Tyler. If you guys would do me a favor, just jump in on the chat and just type in what school you're from. Are you Overwatch? Are you a coach, a sponsor? You know, what's your interest level within the game? I just like to get a feel. I didn't think this was going to be a huge audience, so I'd like to get to know a little bit more about you guys and kind of tailor some of the conversations to what you're looking for. So if you have a chance, try to jump that in chat. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Awesome. Yep. All right, Tyler, I remember. Yep, I remember Eureka joining us last year for the season, so that was very cool within the IHSEA. Jake, Polk County High School, Southern Illinois. That's got to be down there because I'm not too familiar with the name. Well, thank you appreciate you guys coming. And then Dan, yeah, and then Dan, awesome, very very cool. Got a lot of family up in Cheese World up north there, but not spent a lot of time in Wisconsin in the past. So, but it's very very cool to have out of state people here with all of our stuff. So welcome. I've seen you pretty active in the chats on some other things. So thanks for coming. All right, 1:30. So I'm going to get this rolling. Let's see. And Kevin, middle school, excellent. All right, very very cool. All right, so this is the Overwatch coaching session from the basics to advanced topics. A little bit about me, just so I can get to the right slide here. My name is Chris Terpstra, otherwise known as Coach Terp. I am the general manager of Esports, the head coach for Overwatch, and I work within the special education department at Naperville North High School in Illinois. I am also the tournament operator for IHSEA. Last year it was just one title. Now I'm probably going to be doing half of the titles, so I'll have all three between Overwatch, League of Legends, and Valorant. My contact information is seen there below. So if you guys ever have any questions, you can always feel free to reach out to me. But let's kind of get this thing going here. I've got a whole lot of material, and I doubt I'll cover it all in 45 minutes. But that being said, this whole topic in this session that I want to do is really participant oriented and tailored to what everyone else here is looking for. Because when it comes to some of these titles that we offer, or just within esports in general, we runs the full gambit from coaches or sponsors that say they got kids that, hey, we want to play Overwatch. You're like, great. I have no idea even what that game is. And you've got all the way up to, I think I saw somebody's mention that they had played certain roles and stuff like that within the game. So they've got obviously some in-game knowledge, which is very, very useful. So it, again, runs that full kind of gambit. So I know a bunch of you were putting in your level of involvement with Overwatch in the chat like I'd asked, so I appreciate that. That kind of gives me a feel for some of the things I'm going to be talking about. But when we get into that, please feel free to just totally jump in on the chat. And if you want some further explanation or in-depth stuff, or a similar topic that we're talking about, just kind of a little bit off the side, we can definitely hit all sorts of stuff. But go ahead and use that chat option, and I've got it open, so which is great. So nothing like a spouse playing Torbjorn. I have a dad that plays one of the dad's of one of my kids. That's all he plays. He's got more hours than I've ever seen on anybody on a character. So that's always hilarious for that kind of stuff. All right. So yeah, please. I love this chat to be active. That's going to help a whole lot. All right. So some of the prepared topics I have, you guys can see here. Again, how much time I spend on each one or how in depth I go will depend on what kind of questions or comments you guys want to make. But from just the overall game description, the different map types we've got, the character level, not nearly the size of League of Legends, but still pretty large in its numbers and size. Team comps and communication within that, cycling some of your ultimates and combos. That's a little bit more of advanced conversations. And then some coachable skills and tips that will kind of take us, that can be applied pretty much to almost any esports. Yes, thanks, Kevin. 32 is correct. Joe from Bolingbrook. Good to have you. So level 25. See, that's what I'm talking about, right? You just got high enough just so you can play comp, but that's all there was to it. So there you go. All right. And then, back at Hinsdale Central. Awesome. All right, so let's keep this rolling. It looks like we've got a pretty good wide range from the lowest, I've got no idea what's going on, or I barely played the game, to, again, those players. So game description, I put this up here from ESPN. I'm not going to read it, but you guys can. I thought they did a really good job in an article last year talking about what Overwatch is and kind of breaking it down for even like the non-traditional esport players and stuff like that to really describe it. But a lot of times you get those questions from school admin or what is Overwatch, and you try to give it a good description the best that you can. I know that the phrase shooter is sometimes frowned upon, but if you really think about it, like Minecraft is a first-person shooter. It's just we just don't think of it that way because it's all building and engineering and things like that. But that's literally what it is by definition. So there's our game descriptions. But within the game of Overwatch, we have capturable objectives, whether it be stationary or moving. And then right now that the game status is currently in, as far as players are concerned, it's 6v6, and where there's 3 roles that the players fall into: tanks, damage, and support. And I kind of listed the subtopics there, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But currently in the game, they have mandated it as known as 2-2-2, where you have to have 2 characters in each of those roles. That's currently how it is now. It wasn't always that way. For those of us that remember the Heady Goats days of 3 tank, 3 support. But we've moved on from that, as it were, and now we're in 2-2-2 world for everything that is currently happening. Map types is where I'm going to start. We'll get to the characters a little bit. So within Overwatch, the idea is you're trying to win a map, and especially in competitive Overwatch within like the IHSEA or in an esports kind of thing, it's usually best of 5 or best of 3 maps or whatever the case is, where you're trying to win a map. And the map type rotates throughout the tournament. So it could start as one and then move on to another. So there's 4 different map types, and I'm going to go over each one, but there's control, escort, hybrid, and assault. Each of these carries different strategies and thought processes and comps and everything else that I don't have a ton of time for. Like I said, I'll try to hit as much as I can. But these are the ones, again, if you're unfamiliar with the game, these are the types of 4 types of map. And I'm going to go into each type a little bit, and then we can, again, deep dive into those as much as you guys want to do, again, through the chat. So the first type I want to talk about is control. Control is where it's a stationary area on the ground that teams fight over to take control of. And as you take control or you occupy that space, your team wins, they can build up their control percentage, and it goes up to 100%. Within these controls, it's actually there's subtype maps. So, for example, if you look at the picture on the left, that's Ilios. Ilios has 3 different submaps to them. The one that's shown there is called Well, but so you play best 2 out of 3 within the map control. So you have Ilios Well, Ilios Lighthouse, and so on. So you're trying to win 2 of those 3, and it's just first to 100%. And the control goes back and forth. As one team wins, their progress starts upwards, and the other teams will be paused. And then if the other team takes control, then again it swaps and the other one goes up. What is really interesting and probably the most entertaining part about control maps for me is the constant back and forth that occurs. It does allow for some losses, unlike other types of maps where if your team loses, it's pretty much done. Control, you can usually have enough times for 3 or 4 engagements, depending on how quickly they go, and stuff like that. So there's lots of re-engage and strategies that involve, so elevated areas, covered control points, like I mentioned, multiple paths to where you need to go, and there's all sorts of strategies for comps, but high ground being one of them. So again, if you guys have stuff on control questions, I can come back to it and talk about it, but otherwise I'm going to roll on to the next type. Your escort maps are literally where it's a payload, so it's a movable control, if you want to call it that, where depending on how many heroes you have around it, it will move throughout the map. There's control points capture points that you need to get to, A, B, and C. And the payload, like I wrote down there, it when contested, so you've got multiple people from both teams around it, it's not going to move. For the attackers, it will move quicker the more you have around it if the defenders aren't present. And then it'll also slowly move backwards. If the attackers aren't there, they lose a fight, let's say, then defenders, it'll start to slowly move backwards. The idea there is as time goes through, you're trying to push the payload as far as you can, or at least if you are able to complete the map, that's even better. But as you push this payload through the map and the re-contests come back from the defenders, again, if you lose, for example, the one on the left is Route 66, you probably have time to lose 1, maybe 2 fights at most, and you're going to lose capture point A. So that's the doors you see there in the upper right corner. High ground, again, being a major impact on some of these. Some of our escort maps are inside, some are outside, some rotate. So example for Route 66, point A and point B, those routes are all outside, but then when you get to point C, you're inside. So aerial attacks are not as useful at point C and things like that for some of our character choices. Time bank. So that is something that is different than the control. In control, it just ticks up to 100 as first team to get to 100. There really isn't a time aspect to that. Everything else will have time banks involved, and because of that, you're trying to capture a point, and when you do, you get bonus time basically added on. It varies depending on what type of map we're playing, but you're going to have so much time to push that payload, and then if you get it there, it adds time and so on. Otherwise, if you stall out and you're unable to capture whatever point it may be, the farthest progress you have, that'll be where the other team then will take over, and you guys the teams will switch attack and defenders, and you will have that much time to push the payload just as far, and that will be whether or not you win or lose. So there's a brief description there for escort. Hybrid is a combination of escort and control. So point A is always a capture control point. So there's a stationary spot on the ground that you have to fight over. And once you capture point A, then a vehicle of some sort will emerge, and you'll then move into escort mode for points B and C. Map on the left, Blizzard World. Map on the right, Eichenwald. Again, same thing with the time pool. It adds onto your time bank as you're going through, and you're going to swap as that goes through. So something, to go do a little bit further deep discussion into hybrid and escort maps is that thought process of stall, trying to use as much time up as you can versus feeding. And that is one of the in-depth topics. I don't have it written down, but one of the things that people like to talk about within Overwatch coaching is, if you know your team is good at achieving payload or pushing stuff and getting control points, then your real objective is during your defensive turns is just being able to stall out as much as you can or limit the amount of progress made by the other team. Obviously, it sounds that simple, right? But let's say your fight goes bad. Unlike control, when a fight goes bad, the difference between the two, between control and escort hybrid, is when a fight goes bad in control, you want to get out. You are literally, the longer you stay, you're just feeding the other team's ultimate buildups and just giving them bonus experience, if you want to call it that, for their character to build up their ultimate percentage. And unless you're stalling because it's the end of a match, or you're just trying to do whatever you can to, it's in overtime or whatever the case is. But when it comes to hybrid and escort, especially on defense, the thought process there is once you lose a character or two for your team, it's okay to go into stall mode if it's advantageous enough to do, because you're using up time bank. And some characters are built great for this. I'm not saying we want to change our team comp in point A to do stall, but there are periods of time, especially through escorts and hybrid maps, that allow you to take up extra time from the attackers when you're on defense that will just help you in the long run as far as gaining the advantage on a map. Certain maps, some of the points are easier to take than others. So for example, Eichenwald, I think point B is it depends on how you approach it. I think point B is one of the tougher ones to take, and point C is a little bit easier. So once you get through point B, it's like, okay, I should be able to finish the map. Unlike then Blizzard World is the opposite of that. Point B is by far extremely easy compared to point C. Finishing a Blizzard World is a little bit tougher. So it depends on where you want to emphasize your defense and your stall tactics and things like that. Still need to be wary of feeding into ultimate percentages, but there's the stall versus feed concept. All right. The last map type that is available is Assault, otherwise known as 2CP, 2 control point. So again, 2 stationary control points, but instead of like in Control where you just have 1 per sub map, now there's 2 on a map. And there's a time pool involved, or time bank involved, and if you capture point A, then point B comes unlock, and you can go capture that. 2 CPs are, it's a love-hate relationship. You either absolutely love these kinds of maps, or you absolutely hate these kind of maps because of their length that they can go. The 2 on displayed, Hanamura on the left and Anubis on the right, is some of them are known to where if you have a team that can steamroll, so they take point A and they can steamroll whatever ultimate abilities or whatever the case is, they steamroll into B and they capture it, and they leave themselves with a large time bank after completing the map. Well, then you flip sides and you do it again. Teams will continue to do that where both the attackers and then they go to defenders and they're not able to stop the other team, and then you really play the map sometimes 2, or if it's a really close match, it could be played up to 3 times depending on how much time bank is saved. I mean, I've seen Anubis go 7-6 as far as points goes, considering you get 1 point for each capture of AB. So 7-6 is literally 3 times through the map. So, but with that being the case, what really becomes important in Assault is that idea of a defense, because 1 team loss versus anywhere else, this is different than any of the other matches. You lose 1 defense fight, you lose the point. So defense is really what it needs to be so much more of a focus if you're working as a coach when you're talking about Assault maps. Is yes, attack is always great, and that kind of carries through for almost any map, but defense on Assault is so important to have game plans in place, comps in place to really kind of build that skill up, because of the fact that, again, 1 loss and you're done with that point. So again, if you lose A, you still have B to defend, but you've basically given up half a map. So initial engages, shield wars, stuff like that always come up with Assault, and it's for, you can bend as defense, but you can't break. So I always recommend with my kids, especially, that we work big time on our defense on Assault. That's where I spend a lot of our time working at. And again, what you switch after attacks and defense. Okay, so that kind of takes us through the maps. Again, if anybody's got anything, jump that in chat. Haven't seen anything recent, so I'll keep moving. But yeah, any map questions or comments you guys want to make on any of the types? Just to go back at the titles, something down in Assault, Paris, it's there, but it's not there because it hasn't been in comp for a while. I know they're trying to get it back. I don't know if it'll make it there. So we've been basically running just 3 Assault maps between Hanamura, Anubis, and Volskaya, because also Horizon is as much as gravity issues as far as outside the building was fun. It was just not a good map, so they haven't had that in the pool for a while. So I put Paris in there, knowing that they're trying to work on it, but we're down to 3 at the moment. All right. So here's a panorama of the current Overwatch character community. I love this kind of stuff. I had a chance to buy or go bid on one at BlizzCon for when it was autographed and stuff like that, but it's like 8 feet long and it cost way too much, so I didn't really have a shot at it. But and a couple of our newer characters there, we've got Echo left center there, and all the ones that have come in recently. All right. So, like I said, it's not as much characters as far as League of Legends because that's just through the roof. But there is a good amount within Overwatch, and I know they're always looking to expand. They're just not going as crazy. It's 32 characters total currently ready for play. And again, I broke them down. These subtitles, we can debate some of these. I've seen a lot of ones where it kind of goes into different subtypes. For example, I know I got Baptiste written there that he can fit into both main and flex depending on your comp. But these are the different types. And if you're building a team, you want to have some flexibility, but the main 6 roles are these. You have the main tank, then you have the off tank, and you've got 2 DPS. Normally, it's 1 hit scan, 1 flex / projectile. Again, there is some variance to that if you want to run double hit scan or something of that sort. And then for your support, you've got 1 main and 1 flex. Again, some characters can definitely fit into more than one subtype. But one of the cooler things is within this game versus, let's say, League of Legends, is that mid-map, mid-anything, you can go back and change your character choice and adjust your entire, either one player or an entire team can readjust their strategy. And this is where that comp idea comes in, and I'll touch on that in a little bit, is that you're running your head against a brick wall and something's not working, time to change it up. Well, you don't have to lose the map just to do that. You can do that mid-fight. You come out with a certain comp or a certain group of characters. It doesn't work. Captain calls for a change. Everybody goes back to spawn, and you're able to adjust your characters mid-fight, mid-map without an issue there. Yes, it takes time. So obviously when you're in time bank, that is going to be yeah, good. Thanks. I appreciate that. It's one of those, it takes more time to go back to, but sometimes it's just worth it, right? Especially if you've tried a couple of things and whatever defense you're running into, you're not able to get through, breaking through, like I say, an assault map that's running double shield or something, and you gotta find some angles or something to work. So maybe you go and you switch to Pharah or something like that to get some off angles going. Yeah. So let's take a look at some of that. We got a couple of comments here in the chat. So screenshot. Appreciate the breakdown. Good. Yes, exactly. So one of the things that I could spend pretty much like the entire session on is just counters, right? And that's a great point, Dan. Is counters. What counters what? It's almost kind of like that rock, paper, scissors, where it's like a triangle. Like one character may counter another, but then is weak to something else, and it kind of goes in this circular path. And it does that for comps. It does that for individual characters. So that's a great point to bring up to. With that. So with all of this, as far as the number of characters go, you really have to start thinking about team compositions, because this game is not dependent upon individual skill. Don't get me wrong. I've got a DPS character that can pop off at any time, and he's been known to carry a fight, carry a map throughout it all. And, again, that is one character based. But if you don't have that, the idea about Overwatch is that it's such a team game and everybody has to play their part, that you got to have these comps worked out. So not only do you want to try counters and stuff, but you want to have a full composition idea. So since its inception, there has been, balance changes throughout the game. Currently, right now, I'm flabbergasted to say that the thought process right now is that things are fairly balanced. Like I can't remember that. Normally, there's like 1 or 2 comps that's just outstanding, where that's just like, why would you not play this kind of comp? Because it's so good, whether someone got a buff or a nerf or whatever the case is. But right now, no dominant meta comp. That could change tomorrow. Whatever the next balance update is, we'll find out. But talking about your individual players, I always, there was a team, just speaking from experience, last year on my team, Naperville North, we went up against Whitney Young, and they were a great team. Hats off to them. They were awesome. They played a one-trick comp, which means that they spent all their time playing the same characters, playing the same composition. They got really, really good at it. But they didn't have any flexibility, and they didn't have a wider hero comp. So then when we changed ours, they didn't have a response. And that was shown in our state championship matches. When players that have a wider hero pool, or at least have the ability to widen out their hero pool, you can find those different comps to be successful at. I think that's such a huge part of the game, is being able to say, okay, we want to be assertive, we want to be aggressive, but at the same time, like, we can't keep running the same thing, because then it gets figured out. So almost like chess or whatever it is, you want to throw them a curveball. Any analogy you want to take to that is awesome. In the idea that you want to have that wider hero pool, so you can make changes or be able to adjust to whatever another opponent might be doing. I did write down some different comps. Again, just a few. They're not by any means. This is not exhaustive list. I can only fit so much. I also don't want to. One of the things Coach McGee was talking about is like, are you going to give away any of your stuff? I'm like, no. I'm going to try to keep some of that stuff closer to the heart. But for example, I put down some different types of comps. Goats. That's unfortunately we can't do those anymore because we don't have the 3 and 3 anymore. But it's 2-2-2. But double bubble, double shield, and dive are very, very common comps that you see, at least within the competitive scene. So I did write down one dive comp. There's several different comps and within dive that you can interchange characters. But the idea being is that a lot of these characters can close distance very easily. So Winston and Diva both have ability to move very quickly, elevate themselves if necessary. Tracer and Echo have off angle and flanking capabilities within their characters. And Ana has her support is all range, so she can stay out of the midst of stuff. And Brigitte loves to just get in the face of everybody. So it's a movable comp. It allows for off angles. It gets the dive is the idea. We're going to get past the front line. We're going to get into their back line in a hurry, and that's exactly what that comp could do. Double shield that I've got out there listed. It's definitely more of a waiting game. This is reminiscent of when we were in Goats, but it still works now. So when you've got Arissa Sig, Ryan Arissa, it's not bad. Not very, very slow tank line if you go that far. But the idea is the double shield, it provides, you're going to rotate in, right? Arissa Sig, Ryan, Zarya, stuff like that, where you're rotating your off tank and your main tank and trying to get those shields on rotations. It's a waiting game. You're outcycling your opponent, trying to build up your ultimates, trying to find the crack in the armor. Neither team is overly too aggressive, those kind of things. So there's, again, a double shield example. So let's see what Dan had to say here. Pharmacy. Yeah, Pharmacy. Ryan Zarya goes back to the heady days of when this game first came out. Pharmacy, also we call it Pharmacy because it's Pharah and Mercy, both mobile characters, both flying characters, providing that off-tank Mercy with her DPS support for her alternate beam is one of those things that you'll see a lot of. We'll get into the Wombo combos here in a little bit for ultimates, but just from the coaching aspect, going a little bit further in, is get your players to either give you or as a team kind of figure out, hey, what are various comps, what are various characters, and kind of look at seeing what you could do. And this even carries itself sometimes into tryouts. You don't want to have 3 main tanks on a team, right? That's not going to do you any good. You're going to need somebody that can play off tank. You're going to need somebody that can play flex support or main support or wwhatever the case is. So you're not too overly loaded. It's not going to help you if you're going to have 3 awesome Rhine players. Okay, great. But that's, you're covered. You've got the same players covered for in your team. So you want to make sure that you've got some flexibility within that. And I think that's super important to have, especially in competitive Overwatch. All right, moving a little bit beyond the aspects of the game. So you had, we've got maps and we've got characters and stuff like that. Communication, I cannot stress, and it's really the great part about communication. It goes to all games that we play and even beyond the gaming world. Is you can have all the technical skills. You know exactly where to stand. You know how to take off angles. You know how to get cover. Whatever the case is. But if you can't talk, it's not going to be a very long match. Within the communication within Overwatch, there are roles that need to be played, and some of these can be played by any character. Some of them are. It's better if certain character types play them. So, for example, I put in main shot caller. That is normally your main tank or your main DPS that is going to be calling that out. I always prefer the main tank because he's got that nice wide open view. He's on the front line, so everything's kind of in front of him. The problem with it sometimes when you have a DPS being a main shot caller, he may be at an off angle or whatever the case is, and he's not seeing the entire battlefield, so it's a little bit tougher to do. So main shot caller is normally your main tank. Your secondary, normally your off tank, can again be a DPS, is when that main tank goes down, or if you're in like this huge team fight and your main tank or whatever, your main shot caller ends up going down early, but let's say now it's like 5v5. It doesn't really help to have a character that's been eliminated be your shot caller because he's not, he can't get in there. He's just on the sideline, or maybe he's back at spawn now and he's not able to see what's going on in the game. So you have to have an alternate for when that main caller is down, and it has to be just as if the main was calling it. So ego's got to get a little bit check here where you get your main caller and your off caller, they carry the same amount of weight, but only when the main is down. when the main's not down, off needs to stay off comms as far as when shot calling has occurred. Another thing that needs to be done during your communication is you're looking at ultimate trackers. This is I feel it's a very underrated skill, and it's very, very hard to master. But anybody that's got any sort of inkling, it can really tip the favor of a team is when you're starting to think about what does the other team have for ultimates. I think I've got, is it the next slide? Yeah. So we'll talk about ultimates again, but they're skills that basically you're building up, big usage skills that can sometimes sway a fight depending on how they're used, or prolong a fight if they're like support type ultimates. But being able to track those, say, hey, they're halfway to this, or they should have this, as far as knowing what you're walking into, is a big part of Overwatch and the communication between team members expecting it. So, for example, if you know that there's a big DPS one coming, whether it be a grab from Zarya and they're going to follow it up with something, and you've got a Lucio on your team and you've got beat drop, you need to stay out of that grab and then come in as soon as that goes down because you got to save them. Or if you got a Zen and you got to come in with Transcendence or whatever it is that you're trying to do, there's timing that's involved, and it's great to know when their ultimates are coming, or at least you have an idea. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes, I've heard people on comms say they've got this and they're only like 25% to that ultimate. So being able to track that's a skill that's acquired throughout much playing time. And if you've got a character or got a player on your team that can do that, that's a huge plus for you. The last part I put there was backside pressure notification. So your support line or your backside DPS, if they're playing, Widow or whatever the case is, being able to call out when they're getting pressured, or if someone is able to get a flank on them, they got to let everybody know. And that's sometimes when an off tank does peel and needs to come back for. That's so important that because a lot of times our support characters aren't the most communicative. At least what I've found is sometimes support doesn't talk as much, just because they're so busy worrying about keeping everybody healed that they're not considering themselves. Sometimes they lose track of their own health bar. So, hey, Dalton, good to have you. Hey, if you want to, I'm not saying no. So you can always go ahead and jump in on the video and the thing in the chat. So if you want to ask, I'm all for it. We got a big crowd here, 17 people. Whew, awesome. All right. So inside that communication, I've laid out those roles, but everyone knowing where they fit in is even more important than having the roles. Because if you have 4 players calling out targets, that's not gonna help a team at all, right? You got to have one doing that, and you got to have that alternate. So everybody filling their role is very, very important. Outside of the game, building up your communication is not only a lot of fun, but I find that really does transfer well into the game itself. So like I take my team, we go paintballing, we've done laser tag, we've done, bowling's not so much communicative, but we have social activities, but I try to do some things outside of the game that use some of those same type of skills. And, I just listed a couple of activities that we've done in the past to kind of help build those communication skills with our squad. All right, going back into the game mode now. I probably should have swapped these two. That's all right. Ultimates, cycling, and combos. One of the terms that we use in Overwatch is one we call dry fighting. Dry fighting is where you're not going to, if you have ultimates, you're not using them, or like you're trying to build up or whatever the case is, you're just going to dry fight it. And then you always have dry fights at the beginning of your first engagement because nobody's got it built up high enough, right? But then after that first engagement, or if that first engagement goes long enough, ultimates are going to be built up, and they're going to get used almost every fight because of that. Hey, Dalton.
Hello. I figured I'd take you up on your offer. Finally,
yeah, absolutely. No, I figured we did so well at the tryouts one. I'd love to. I jumped in probably on one of your favorite slides too.
I saw the word wombo combo and decided to turn on my camera. You know what I'm saying?
Awesome. All right. So when you're looking to invest multiple ultimates in a fight, communication first, because it's normally like what we call these combos or wombo combos, where you are investing what you think is enough to win, but using too much, and now your next fight or your next fights, multiple, can quickly tilt to the other team because of the balance. So this is where that cycling idea comes in. So if I use Grav, I probably only want to use one other ultimate to try to win that, because if I start dumping everything into it, it's gonna we've wasted a lot of our ultimates when we probably could have gotten the same results without it. But that in-game discussion part is what has to happen. So if you're between fights, you're looking to re-engage, you've gone over your ultimate percentages, so your tracker is called out what the other team has. then it's up to that shot caller to really say, okay, here's what we're going to invest. Here's how we're going to do it. This is all being done in the span of, 5 to 10 seconds prior to a team fight. And you're trying to get that out there. But I did want to give some examples of those, quote, wombo combos, right? Wombo combos are basically ultimates that are put together that are so good, why would you not use them? The first one I've got there is listed is Grav and anything. So Grav is a Zarya ultimate. It's one where it pulls the entire team into a gravity field, basically, and then holds them there for a little bit. So it's basically grabs everyone and pulls them to a center point, and then any effect. So you've got Diva with her mech bomb, Tracer with her bomb stick, Hanzo with Dragon, Doomfist with a Meteor Strike. Anything that has that kind of thing where an area of effect is going to be huge for when you pull someone into a Grav. I've also put Gravitic Flux and Deadeye, so that's Sigma and McCree. Gravitic Flux grabs opponents and puts them up into the air, makes it very easy for McCree or even not a non-ultimate Widowmaker to get some usage out of that because they have no defense. They're just up in the air. The favorite, right? Nanoblade is Ana Genji. Genji's ultimate is already painful enough. You put a nano boost into that, and it's pretty much unstoppable for almost anything. And then you've got some double tank combos where if you have an Echo that's playing, Echo's ability is to copy any character on the field, and they can quickly gain percentage to get 1, possibly 2 ultimates out of that usage. So you could see double Reinhardts, which means you could get like 2 or 3 ground shatters, a couple of grabs between Zaryas, whole hogs, you name it. Anything that Echo can copy is great to double that up. Any favorites for you, Coach McGee?
My least favorite is Grav Blizzard. We don't do the Bubba combo. But I think that probably the most fun one for me is the Sigma Wrecking Ball combo, which is not even a really smart one. It's just a really fun one where you put everybody up in the air, you drop the minefield onto them and slam them down into the mines. That's the fun one. Yeah.
Again, wombo combos are great because you're allowed to kind of do some variance to it. For that one, I go, for example, the ball. I'm not a big fan of using ball as an offensive weapon. That is one way of definitely using it, right? Is get the Gravitic Flux and the mines down. But everybody has their own thought on this. But the idea being is, again, cycling those, comboing them up, trying to win team fights. I think one that I didn't have up here is EMP. You don't even really need anything else normally, right? And if you get a successful EMP that can catch your support, and that's the idea, you want to be able to catch your support or catch their support in the back line with an EMP so they can't come through and save the day. No beat drop, no Zen ult or anything like that.
But EMP bomb, speaking of wombo combos, EMP Diva bomb is probably the most oppressive ult combination of the game.
Yeah, you're trying to get out and you're like, I'm never going to make it. I just can't move fast enough to get out of that. So, but talk to your players, kind of look at, again, what their comps are and their hero pool, and come up with, if you're looking for those coachable moments, trying to figure out some of those combinations that can be used to help you win those team fights. All right, let's see what else here. Okay, so again, a couple more slides, not so much based on main game mechanics, but what can you do as a coach, right? You're going to find that a lot of your players know way more about the game, have been playing the game way longer than you have. For example, I can't even come close to my kids' skills and their knowledge of the game, but I do try to provide other parts that actually carry through or are specialized to what a coach can do. So that productive communication piece, praise it when it's there. When it's not there, bring that up in discussion. We need this or this has to change within our communication, because being productive is great. Unnecessary comms, while they can be fun if we're having a good time, sometimes in the little match can take away from that. So a lot of times you hear clear comms or whatever the case is for when you've got an instruction like that. I referenced it earlier, the team building in and out of the game. Have some fun, do some activities off the screen, get them to be more of a group. It goes a long way, especially in that communication piece when they're so used to being with each other. Tilt moments. So when a team is losing and they just are spiraling out of control, right? That is where you as a coach have a great opportunity to be a positive influence during those moments. When you're between maps, that's the time to do it. and obviously you're not able to do anything shouldn't be doing anything during a match, or during a map, but in between is highlighting the good stuff, saying, hey, what can we build upon? All right, and then taking it to where do we need to change? But your players are tilting, when things are spiraling out of control, and that's a great moment for you to step in and really try to help them out. I'm sure, Coach Me, you've got all sorts of fun stories from your end as far as when that starts to go.
Yeah, I think that you guys have probably had a couple tilt moments, particularly with the JV team. But all in all, your varsity team has been so strong that you probably haven't had a lot of them. I will tell you, this matters, guys. We had a scrim partner this last season. We played against Barrington regularly, right? Springfield and Barrington scrimmed all the time, and really, they kind of handed it to us throughout the regular season in these scrims. And my kids were getting so tired of it and so tired of losing that they, my strategy was, we're going to calm down. We're going to have some objectivity. We're going to do this fourth bullet point, he says, and look at video. And you're going to keep doing this until you don't tilt. And then lo and behold, who did we play in the bronze match to end the season? Barrington. And what happened? My kids saw that, and it was same as always. We're fine. We're chilling. It's fine. And really they stomped them. And it was great as a coach to watch, because that's not something that your ability in the game or your game sense affects. That's something, a real world skill that you as an adult can offer your kids. And you see a real moment where it took hold, and it was really special. And so it's a great life lesson. And that's what this slide is all about, really.
Yep, I agree. No, we had our moments, especially in nationals, for that kind of thing.
I forgot you did play at nationals.
We do.
I forgot that happened.
No, but it happened. We haven't. We're still striving there. But then the last point I think you brought it up to is that video review. So VODs and so one of the greatest tools within Overwatch is the ability to go back and look at matches. As long as it hasn't updated, there's codes and stuff involved that you can go back and watch previous matches and stuff like that. And sometimes if you have the time right after a match is great. Obviously, if it was a hard loss or they're tilted, it may not be the greatest moment, but being able to get into the in-game abilities of rewatching a match, because you can look at it from different angles. You can watch it from your opponent's view. You can see, you'll be like, how in the world did this happen? You can go back and look at something like that. There is a lot of review that can come out of the in-game abilities to rewatch matches. And I can't stress that enough. It's so huge when you're able to get in there and really dissect what happened during a match, good or bad, right? Because there's a lot of things you could take from a match and be like, wow, this really, I didn't think this would work, and this worked. Let's go and watch why, and then try to implement maybe further down the line. So VOD is a huge piece of what you can have. A couple more tips. This is, again, more so for, at least first bullet point is your I don't know what to do, kind of thing. If you don't have a lot of skill within the game, it's going to be hard for you to get that hands-on kind of moment. But I will say that the lower skilled your players are, the more hands-on, or at least in that coaching kind of stuff you want to be. I know with my JV squad, and I'm sure Dalton too with yours, is like the more education they need, the more you're in there. But at the same point, like sometimes that's not the worst thing in the world, right? We want to be able to help a player, just like any other sport, develop. I know I get it. It's tougher when you've got limited game knowledge, right? Like I couldn't even imagine me going up to my player being like, I really don't think that this is the mechanical position you should be in. Like, and they look at me like, wait, what rank are you again? Like, that's really hard to do.
Love that question.
So, right. Yeah. So, but finding your comfort zone with your team is super important to find the way to get the most out of them. And I've been lucky enough to be able to do that with my kids. Encouraging scrims. I would say, compared to other sports, so you think about like baseball or football or stuff, these kids, they're out there practicing every day, right? While you could certainly do that, I think that would be a quick way to burn out a team, is having them practice or run scrims every day. For example, my team, we run scrims twice a week. If we're close to a competitive season, or when we're in a competitive season, is getting to be crunch time, whether it be playoffs or nationals or whatever the case is, then we start upping it to maybe 3 times. But I find that the balance right now is twice a week for us. I think, Dalton, you have about the same?
We have the three times a week, and then during actual season, one of those 3 is the match day. So we do three days a week and 4 hours a day that we go to get together.
Ooh, 4 hours. I go 2 hours.
Excuse me, 3 hours. We do 4 to 7.
Yeah. Whatever works for you. Yeah, we go scrim blocks. Our scrim blocks are always 7 to 9 because that's just what's available. So, but again, that's how you just got to kind of find that. But encourage those practice as often as the players want to do them. Don't coach during active play. One thing that gets on their nerves more than anything else is they're already trying to concentrate on comms inside when it comes to players and everything else. And you're talking about ultimate tracking and everything. And it does not help to add your voice to the conversation. Not only is it usually frowned upon by tournaments and stuff like that, it just takes away from their game. So one of those things is stay out of their ear unless it's between map. That's the time to jump in and be that positive presence. And one of the things I also mentioned is, praise that good play, praise that good communication skills, and then just be there when it's the other way around, right? When they're down, if there's conflict between, that's when you really got to step in and be part of that coaching aspect to fill that gap for that. I want to say that is my last slide. So at this point, guys, we've got about 3 more minutes. If there's any other questions, any comments, anything that you guys want to note, it was a broad kind of presentation for Overwatch coaching, but I hope you guys got something out of it. I can go back to any slide if somebody was talking about a screenshot. Let's see. I think somebody got it, but broke that down. Leave it up there for a second. Wait and see if anybody has a question or not. All right, could you detail a little bit on what coaches should be looking for specifically during VOD reviews? So within a VOD review, one of the biggest things that I like to go over is just engagements. How did an engagement start? Because once it gets going, everything kind of can sometimes be chaotic. But looking at positioning at the start of an engagement can really lend to why did this engagement work or why did this engagement not work? So your angles, who's presenting what as far as threats are concerned, the visible ones, the not visible ones. If you have mobile characters, where are they at? Are they in position at that point? So if you're talking like a Tracer or an Echo or something like that. But that's the biggest thing when I get to VODs is just that engagement. Once everything starts getting in there and the action is starting to go, then you're really looking for, I would guess, those moments of did we time out if you're trying to do combos, whether it be regular skills, your W or whatever the case is, excuse me, or if you're with your regular skills or your ultimates, are our timings good? So shield rotations, usages. So like I would say like an Ana grenade or at least Lucio boost. Are they coming when they need to be there? Or are they late? Are they early? Something like that. Thank you, Dalton. I appreciate it. Let's see. Do either of you run specific drills outside of having your team queue up and play together for a match? Drills. I know, like, for example, my support players, they'll do Lucio wall riding stuff within the mods within Overwatch all the time. Obviously, aim practices. I'm trying to. What's the program? I can't remember what it's called now off the top of my head, but it's to warm up your aim. I know there's a shooting range within Overwatch, and obviously some players use that. But there's some outside programs that basically allow you to work on your hand and mouse movement to get warmed up rather quickly. So sometimes we do that. But really, it's pretty much just inside the game as far as that goes. As far as queuing up, so like quick play and comp like that, I encourage my players to play with each other as often as they can. Again, it just builds that communication piece. Full stacking comp is probably not the best idea, just because all our players are different ranks and stuff like that. So you want to put away from that. There was a question. Let's see here in Q&A. If my students only have consoles available, there we go. Could they play cross-platform with PC while your team gets started? Yes. So one of the cooler parts about, or it's the more opportunity part for Overwatch this year, is that Overwatch has now gone cross-platform, which means any system can talk to any other system and be able to play that way. So you could have 2 PC players, 2 PlayStation players, and 2 Xbox players or console, whatever you want to call them. And yes, they could all play on the same team. So it is definitely a viable option. I know some teams last year, I think Dalton, he took off, but I think he had one player that was on PC but still using controller. Yes, there's definitely I always talk about there's a little bit of a disadvantage there because your response time with a controller versus a response time with a keyboard and mouse is significantly different, and sometimes that's all it takes when it comes to engagements. So if that may be your only option, yes, there is still a way that you can still compete, and we would love to have anybody involved within the season. So that would be for that. I do believe it's public within the custom match ability. So that's the one of the things. So when we get into the comp season, we run custom lobbies with the competitive setting, but that should allow everyone to then connect. And it's not even going to tell us what players are on what console. It won't make any difference as long as you have them on the Blizzard ID and you're able to identify them and invite them to lobby. You should be good to go. Somebody asked, what kind of website do I use? It depends. I don't put a lot of I guess focus on what another team does. I like our team to focus in on what they do. It's great to do scouting, right? If there's VODs or if a school runs a Twitch stream and you want to go and watch their stuff. But over the years, all of our stuff's been broadcasted. All our secrets are out there as far as that kind of stuff goes. So, I don't. If somebody wants to watch my stuff and look at to see what my players like to play, we try to vary it anyways as we go through the different metas. So I always feel like focusing on your own team is a little more important than scouting others. By all means, though, if you have the ability to, that's not bad. But the rankings, as far as SR skill ranking and stuff like that for another team, so you know what you're getting into, or maybe what their main players are. There's a couple of them out there. You can just Google, Overwatch rankings and get a couple from in there. But I guess I don't bank too much on that. So, your player rankings. I see. Well, when you're in game, so if you're in game with lobby with them, then you can go ahead and look at where they ended up as far as their SRs with their, as long as their profiles are public. Otherwise, you're going to have to inquire because they can choose to make those private if they choose to. That is not something the IHSEA requires. You do not have to make your profile public to do that. So let's see here. Okay, Dan. Yes, there's a lot of resources out there in the world when it comes to people that want to help. I've had some private coaching experiences that we were able to go and find. I've had, like you said, a couple of college coaches come in. There's tons of free stuff out there for you. So snatch all up that you can for your kids. That's a great thing. I don't want to keep anybody any longer, so I know we've gone a couple minutes over, so it's 2:18. If you have any other questions, please feel free to shoot me an email. I hope you guys enjoyed this session, but otherwise, go hit the next one. Everything should be up and running. So thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. And everybody else have a good day. I'll hang around for a couple minutes, see if there's anybody else, but go hit those other sessions. I don't want to take away from those. I think Dalton said he had to go take off to his Fortnite one that he was running up. Oh, at 2:15. He's got a Fortnite discussion. So if you want to go nuts about Fortnite, head over to Coach McGee's presentation.